Environ, the Living World series. Khomyn Tal Takhi, Przewalski's horse of the Humming Steppe NGO, presents. These are the great and free steppe lands that unfold upon the heart of Eurasia, a peaceful and vast open space where the sun shines brightly, wind whistles melodiously, grass sways lazily, and clouds drift slowly in the clear sky. This pristine wilderness feels primeval and untouched and makes one think that it had remained untouched throughout time from the moment of its formation. This place is the humming steppe with the unique and uncommon ecosystem and is the new land, new home of the Dzungaring horse or the wild horse. Environ, the Living World series, Khomyn Tal Takhi, Przewalski's horse of the Humming Steppe NGO and the Takhi Association for the Przewalski's horse brings this program from Khomyn Tal, where the last and only species of wild horses are successfully being reintroduced to the wild. Przewalski's horse of the Humming Steppes. If you are to draw a straight line, exactly 1,000 kilometers to the east of Ulaanbaatar, parallel to the latitude on a map, the place we're about to be introduced to could easily be found. This is the land beyond land, and the formation beyond belief. The steppes of Khom, located within Duruljinsum of Zafn Amag, Har Lake and Durgun Nor gleams to the west, and surrounded by Mongolian dunes to the south, and east traveling quietly as migrating of sand, as written in the song Zafn Gol.
It could be said that Khomyn Tal is a haven for wildlife due to the specific of its geographical location being surrounded by lakes and rivers. About 40 kilometers of sand dunes are stretched along its south. In other words, it is an island of almost pure, untouched nature. Therefore, Khomyn Tal presents relatively little negative effects on any animal, but especially so to animals being reintroduced. In this sense, it was one of the reasons why Khomyn Tal was chosen for the reintroduction.
The three facts. Fact number 1. Khomyn Tal is located in the Great Lakes Depression in the western Mongolia and spans an area of 2,500 square kilometers. Fact number 2. Khomyn Tal consists of predominantly desert, steppe, and arid steppe ecosystems. Fact number 3. The average surface elevation is 1,250 meters and is relatively low set. Khomyn Tal is a place full of wild animals and untamed nature, as it has a unique ecosystem that is relatively distant from human contact. Of the 47 species of mammals recorded, 7 species are listed in the Mongolian Red Book. One of the unique and rare species of mammals, the Mongolian gazelle, is grazing peacefully. The territory of gazelles has shrunken in the western Mongolia, and the animals' numbers have diminished. For this reason, during the 1980s, Mongolian scientists successfully implemented an interesting project here in Khomyn Tal. The Mongolian gazelle was transported from eastern Mongolia to Khomyn Tal, where there were none at the time. Today, one can see the fruits of the project. The Mongolian gazelles traveling not only within the Great Lake Depression, but also to the western face of the Hanggai Mountains. The Saiga antelope, which had stopped being seen in recent decades, have begun to be observed in Khomyn Tal. And these antelopes, seen traveling in the mirages, are newcomers to Khomyn Tal. Currently, their numbers are relatively few, at just over 60 heads. However, the day they grow and multiply in numbers is not far. In addition to the Mongolian ibex, the black-tailed gazelle, the wild boar that make home in the reeds are recorded in the Mongolian Red List. And snow leopards were observed in the Ichborel, Bagborel, Ichherchen, and Bagherchen mountains. The incredibly rare Dalmatian pelicans, once in debate about whether they could survive, to have started to migrate here. There are around 150 species of birds in the Khomyn Tal region. These are some of the 150 species of birds as captured on the lenses of our cameras. Khomyn Tal is a place that has preserved the characteristics of the Gobi Steppe region. According to biologists, it is dominated by desert steppe and dry steppe traits, with sparse vegetation. Of course, a Gobi region cannot overtake a Hanggai, a combination of steppe and mountainous landscape in terms of vegetation. Although sparse, the flora of this place is incredibly nutritious.
За дээр нь өв сургуулийн хувьд бол Khomyn Tal хэдийгээр тачирхан
Because Khomyn Tal is in the Gobi region, the grass and plants are meager here. Nonetheless, the flora here has a high nutritious character. Aside from wild leek, ramson, and similar plants, grass as Samokhlov lossa grows here too. Its a chemical constitution and its high nutritious character make it the most nourishing fodder for the herbivores. In other words, while the land may look sparsely covered with plants, what does grow here is full of nutrients.
This is Pomoclia, one of the earlier mentioned plants, rich in nutrition. Starting its growth in May, flowering in June, this plant's seed ripen by the end of August. At the start of their growth, the Pomoklia plant consists of 14.9% protein and 32.6% fiber. As protein is vital to build muscle mass and improve health and strength, this plant is especially precious for herbivores. There are many advantages to the Pomoklia plant. It is tolerant to drought, grows only with soil moisture, is less damaged in the winter, and is well preserved. The famous Mongolian sand dune stretches in the south of Khomyn Tal. These sand dunes are recorded to be the largest dunes in Mongolia. In recent years, due to overgrazing of grasslands and reduced rainfall, the Mongolian sand dunes have been observed to be encroaching further north towards Khomyn Tal. One can't hope to cross these dunes with cars and any machinery, only with the aid of humble camel, the ship of the Gobi Desert, may one travel the dunes. The Takhi River flows along the eastern side of Khomyn Tal and the northern edges of the Mongolian sand dunes. Flowing from Otlontingir, the Takhi River travels towards the Arag Lake. The Takhi Lake and its valleys are home to many species of animals we have mentioned before. One can encounter the elegant Papillia macaon, also known as the Old World Swallowtail, included in the Mongolian Red Book, near the rich and fertile soils along the river valley. Great egrets have migrated to the banks of the Takhi River. Not far away, a nest of the largest known carnivorous bird species in Mongolia, the Cinereus vulture, can be seen. Let us see who's inside the nest. This is the hatching period for the species. Some of the eggs have yet to hatch, but in a hurry to get to know the world. This precious little chick is always chirping away, demanding food. The nest of a short-eared owl too has met its new residence. Under the evening sun, a bearded vulture is watching all of this from above. In pristine wilderness, the Takhi River and Khomyn Tal, the lives of these species continue on at its own pace. Sea buckthorn, encountered only occasionally along the Takhi River in the past, has expanded to become a thicket with sharp-tasting, orange-colored berries growing from every branch. Before Khomyn Tal was taken under protection, sea buckthorn was very rare and not as abundant as it is today.
When the Takhi first arrived in Serin Oro in Khomyn Tal, sea buckthorn bushes used to grow only on the upper side of Sir and the lower side called Ulam Bora. Back then, an area of 17 to 18 kilometers was barren land without any bushwood. Since reintroduction of the Takhi and making of Khomyn Tal a local protected area, thus effectively prohibiting livestock entry, sea buckthorn has so far grown into a very dense bush. Thanks to the spread of the bushes, the number of animal species here has been also growing.
Khomyn Tal is a natural island with an extraordinary ecosystem on land. For this reason, This quiet corner of the world, located 1,000 kilometers away from Ulaanbaatar and 8,000 kilometers from Paris, was selected as the third place for the reintroduction of Przewalski's horses in our country. The reintroduction of Przewalski's horses in Khomyn Tal had begun quite early. I've been trying to visit Mongolia ever since I started researching horses in southern France in the 1970s. But it was not possible due to the circumstances of the time. So in 1993, I set a goal to introduce a herd of Przewalski's horses in France. A mountainous highland area was selected, and we began working towards creating a herd of several dozen horses in the wild. Afterwards, I came to Mongolia to study the Mongolian Holden. At that time, projects to reintroduce Przewalski's horses to the Hostai Mountains and Takhi steppes had already begun. So we searched for places with fixed natural boundaries, similar to an island, and especially protected areas in particular. The place that met these requirements was our Khomyn Tal. This was how Miss Claudia Fair's choice landed on Khomyn Tal. Khomyn Tal fully met the criteria of being a natural island. Furthermore, Khomyn Tal was a part of the neighboring region of the Kharos Nor National Park. The specially protected area of 850,000 hectares in the vicinity of Kharos Lake was established in 1997. Not only does the Kharos Lake mitigate the harsh climate of the Khomyn Tal, but also it is vitally important for many species of animals, especially birds. In addition to these basic factors, it was said one minor criterion had to be taken into account. The cause of overgrowth in local horses' hooves had to be studied. It was found that sandy soils were affecting the overgrowth of horses' hooves.
Khomyn Tal wasn't chosen for Takhi reintroduction for no reason. Due to the sandy soil here, the hooves of horses in this area grow tightly outwards. This is linked to the fact that the hoof growth in the summer, when the horse step on hot sand after lengthy stays in river and lake water, is not limited by anything. That is why this mountain desert was selected, because we had to consider the soil in addition to the river water and plants of this region.
For the preparation for this immense undertaking, French scientists had selected 11 Przewalski's horses of different lineages from several European zoos and cultivated 4 herds for breeding for 10 years. In these 10 years, the number of Przewalski's horses bred in La Vallerie had reached 55. So the year 2004 came.
자, 2004 онд
The first Takhi arrived in this location where we are right now, in 2004. The Association of Przewalski Horse of France, Mongolia Academy of Sciences, together with other relevant organizations, have organized the first transport. The Takhi were flown into Haupt City by Il-76 plane and flown from Haupt to Khomyn Tal by An-26. The plane landed on the Khomyn Tal in wild landing strip. The first 12 Takhi tired due to the long journey didn't venture far in the beginning. However, it didn't take them long to start getting acclimated. Watching them, it felt as though seeing a person return home.
Yes, after going extinct in the wild and recovering after 30 years, it was as if the Przewalski's horses were finally returning home. The Takhi Association for the Przewalski's Horses, in cooperation with World Wildlife Fund, began the groundwork for reintroducing Przewalski's horses to its home in Khomyn Tal. Located on the junction of Takhi, Khomyn and Hof provinces in 2000, and transported 12 Przewalski's horses in 2004 and 10 in 2005 from France. It is a curious and happy coincidence that France and Mongolia were connected through the Przewalski's horse. What we are seeing is the horse that was depicted upon the walls of the La Clos cave in the southern France. The coloring, the body portion, and the mane, it is undoubtedly the Przewalski's horse. It is evident that the Przewalski's horse existed in Europe, especially in France. This can be seen from the La Clos cave painting. The Przewalski's horses are easily recognizable, with a short mane and identical coloring, though it is unfortunately a remnant of a long past. We all know that only in Europe, but also throughout the world, the Przewalski's horse is extinct. However, it is wonderful to be able to appreciate the Przewalski's horses reintroduced in Mongolia, especially in Khomyn Tal, where I work. The Przewalski's horse, classified as extinct in the wild, but the International Union of Conservation of Nature red list prior to 1996, are now grazing freely in the lands of Khomyn Tal. The ancestors of these Przewalski's horses, who have regained their wild and free nature, were captured as a foal and transported to Europe more than 100 years ago. There are even reports that foals were chased and captured from the lands of Tal near Khomyn Tal and taken to Europe. Such 3 facts. Fact number 1. One of the 53 foals captured from the Mongolian Gobi and taken to zoos in Europe, lineages of only 12 remained. Fact number 2. The Przewalski's horse foal captured from the Dzungarian Gobi by a research team from the Mongolian Academy of Sciences in 1947 was the last foal to have been caught in the wild. Fact number 3. By 1950, only 12 had survived in zoos, and the Przewalski's horse had not been seen in the wild since 1969. The progeny of the Przewalski's horse had endured for a century until their return to their home. The genetic diversity of the lineages of the Przewalski's horses captured from Mongolia in zoos throughout Europe, America, and Australia had decreased, and inbreeding had become a concern. In other words, the Przewalski's horse had gone extinct in the wild and had also been going extinct under human care. In 1975, only 40% of the mares had delivered, and the survival rate of the foals had continued to drop. Today, although the herd is relatively small, the survival rate of the foals in Khomyn Tal is at 74.4%. To put it differently, 3 out of 4 foals are reared, healthy, and hale, which is considered by experts to be remarkably high. Khomyn Tal is a golden opportunity for biologists to study, observe, and collect data on the behavior and the nature of the Przewalski's horse. Veteran researchers studying Przewalski's horses for several years say that one of the defining traits of their behavior is their cooperative nature. In France, we considered a number of factors, including genetic data, genealogy, and behavioral characteristics when selecting the Przewalski's horse to send to Mongolia for a reintroduction into the wild. However, we did not separate or isolate these four herds. Instead, we focused on keeping them close to each other. We speculated that it would aid them when the Przewalski's horse herd begins to live independently in the wild in Mongolian Khomyn Tal, and protected them from threats such as wolf attacks. The decision was proven correct.
За манай тахиуд маань одоо нэгээр бэлчээр хэлж байна.
Currently, our Takhi is grazing with 5 breeding herds, and a new one is developing soon. We are currently right in the middle of the Takhi foaling season. So far, 5 mares have foaled, and the foals are all healthy. Takhi's behavior changed during the mating and foaling season. Right now, an 18-head herd consisting of both stallion and bachelor stallions are grazing together. The 6 to 7-year-old stallions in prime breeding age. The without own bands tend to attack those with own herds or older stallions. In terms of behavior, they tend to become aggressive and violent.
For example, where else would one observe how the stallions compete for dominance over the herd? They, on the other hand, are young stallions testing the dominant, mature and powerful leader of the herd. The horses in the lens of the researcher are the continuation and the offspring of the first herd brought from Europe 15 years ago. 22 horses from France in 2004 and 2005 and 4 horses from Czech in 2011 were transported. Miroslav Bobek, the director of Prague Zoo, who personally oversaw the completion of the latest transport of the Przewalski's horses in 2011, reminisced. In 2011, we traveled 17 hours by plane from Prague and 22 hours by truck from Hovdamuk to Khomyn Tal. I was worried about what would happen when I finally opened the box with the Przewalski's horses. However, our 4 Przewalski's horses did not display any signs of fatigue after such a long journey, and they immediately rushed out of the box and set foot on Mongolian soil. I could not hold back my tears as they sniffed the soil of their homeland and began to graze upon the pasture of the steppe. It felt as if they had always been there, even though they had just landed in their homeland. I am now at the Prague Zoo. The Przewalski's horses that would be transported to Mongolia would be kept behind these fences. I completed the research for my doctoral dissertation in Mongolia. I had a chance to work with Hoste in Khomyn Tal. Mongolia is a horse-loving country with a history spanning thousands of years. Even though the winter of Khomyn Tal is very cold, the Przewalski's horses fare effortlessly. The reintroduction efforts are being successfully implemented, and the quantity of the Przewalski's horses continue to grow. Although the threat, ranking as categorized but the International Union for Conservation of Nature continues to decrease. It is too early to say that the work is complete. Now is the time to think about where else the reintroduction efforts could continue. And so, the 26 horses, transported 3 separate instances in 2004, 2005, and 2011, have grown to 89 strong, and have long since acclimated to the land of their foregenitors. This is the successful beginning of a program, and not the final result. Before the realization of a successful beginning, there must have been threats, risks, challenges, and obstacles in these 15 years. The Przewalski's horses, which have been under human care in warmer climate, had to overcome and adapt to numerous risks, including frigidity, storms, wolf attacks, domestic animal influence, competition for pasture, communicable and non-communicable diseases. There were also negative experiences, such as mares not being able to carry in their first 2 years due to the after effects of injections for their transportation. We are faced with 3 specific challenges. The first and the most important one is water. There are times when it does not snow for prolonged periods in Khomyn Tal. The river freezes. We had to find a solution. The second matter concerns the hybridization of domestic horses. There are just over 600 Przewalski's horses in Mongolia and 89 in Khomyn Tal. However, the domestic horses are counted in the millions. The third matter concerns the transmission of diseases from domesticated animals. There are no possibilities for the transmission of disease in zoos, as they could not have come in contact with domestic horses. However, instances occur when domestic horses entered the enclosure for the reintroduction of Przewalski's horses in the Seir mountain of Khomyn Tal. It is not a significant concern as of yet, but a disease could spread in the future.
As mentioned by Florian Dorat, Przewalski's horses cannot crossbreed with domestic horses in zoos. Although the Przewalski's horses has 66 chromosomes and the domestic horse has 64 chromosomes, the fact that they can crossbreed has become a major concern for those working towards the reintroduction of the Przewalski's horse.
In the future, the Takhi will be released from this 14,000 hectare area and they will graze freely following their natural instincts. We expect that the risks of crossbreeding and diseases will still remain the same. That is why, in all our future long-term strategies for the environment protection, we will have to develop and implement measures on how to mitigate these risks, how to improve their habitat, and how to ensure sustainability of the pasture land. Our strategy is to protect the natural habitat of the endangered species, increase their head count, and guide people towards environment-friendly attitudes and behaviors through sustainable development.
If they were to hybridize, the Przewalski's horse would become extinct as a species. Yes, there were, and still are obstacles and challenges. In the past 15 years, the international team of people who have linked their lives with Przewalski's horse have accomplished a considerable amount of work, such as acclimatizing the horses to their new habitat, protecting them from predators, keeping the newborns healthy, organizing their transportation, performing observations and researches, and procuring financial sources. It has been already 15 years since we came to Khomyn Tal. I have dedicated 26 years of my life to this endeavor. I came here and saw the reintroduction efforts have been very fruitful. Watching these Przewalski's horses in Khomyn Tal, one can truly see wild horses. Their philosophy has already adapted. It is marvelous that being kept inside zoos for over 100 years could reacclimatize to the wild. Khomyn Tal spans an area of 2,500 square kilometers, which is, according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, capable of supporting a population that can grow and reintroduce independently. A population size of 1,500 is considered to be able to grow independently. This is the long-term goal. The short-term goal of Khomyn Tal is a population size of 500 horses able to live independently in the wild. It is wonderful to share the news that this goal approaches ever closer. Another 3 facts. Fact number 1. The yearly growth rate of the Przewalski's horse is at 20%. Fact number 2. The statistics for the survival rate for foals and adult Przewalski horses at 60 to 80% is a relatively high figure. Fact number 3. Upon their head count reaching 100, they are planned to be released from their enclosure. The reintroduction of the only wild horse, the Przewalski's horse, to the wild and increasing their population size to be capable of independent survival is the mission of Khomyn Tal Takhi NGO. However, the project for the reintroduction of the Przewalski's horse to Khomyn Tal is not the extent of their work. The participation of the local people is of paramount importance for the success of the Przewalski's horse reintroduction project. One pressing is that today the number of livestock exceeds the carrying capacity of the land by a factor of 4. Therefore, it is necessary to create a new and sustainable source of livelihood for the herders. The French Association for the Przewalski's horse, Takhi, arrived in Mongolia to examine the reintroduction efforts, as well as to research opportunities for cooperation with local communities. We have launched a number of projects to support eco-friendly green business initiatives for the local community. In addition, research on the establishment of small processing plants for milk, dairy products, and wool, and the development of tourism. What are the expected results of the ongoing and soon-to-be implemented projects? The short answer would be to improve the livelihoods of the local people and increase the size of Przewalski's horse herd through sustainable development without endangering the survival of the Przewalski's horses. The local people participating in the project are also pleased with the initial result of this work. The products created by Mongolian herders as well as Mongolian camel wool entered the market of the place where the Przewalski's horses were brought from, France.
The good quality felt products here are sent to France, and we usually get the next order in fall. We make the felt slippers, wallets, Takhi, and keychains. Every year since 2009, we have been receiving orders in the approximate amount of 4 million tugrix. Today, in 2019, we have busy working with such orders. We have also been exporting wool of young camel from our region to France on an annual basis.
The combined efforts of these ordinary Mongolian herder women, as well as numerous others, including Mongolian and French scientists, rangers, the government, local people, and patrons of the past 15 years, are only the beginning of the great endeavor. Today, from the precipice of the 15 years of work, one can undoubtedly claim that the foundation of the reintroduction of the Przewalski's horse to the 2,500 square kilometer area of Khomyn Tal has been successfully completed. During this period, the Przewalski's horse was promoted 2 categories according to the criteria of the IUCN Red List. Facts continue. Fact number 1. The Przewalski's horse was categorized as extinct in the wild by the criteria of the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List prior to 1996. Fact number 2. In 2006, the categorization was changed to extinct or critically endangered. Fact number 3. In 2011, the IUCN changed the categorization of the Przewalski's horse once more to endangered.
The good work has continued, and now they are endangered, and I look forward to the day that they'll be considered vulnerable, because Mongolia is doing such important work for the conservation of Przewalski horse, and it is a pure joy to see Przewalski horse in Mongolia. And I've said to quite a number of people that I had 2 lives to live. I've mainly worked in Africa. I would also work in Mongolia because I think it's a very special place with special people and one of the most beautiful places in the world. And so I think the Takhi are very lucky to be back in Mongolia.
Yes, there are no other species from the 110 species included in the Mongolian Red Book that was moved to categorizations and saved from extinction in less than 20 years. It is an unprecedented milestone and a grand development. Therefore, conditions must be met for Przewalski's horses to grow, reproduce, spread, survive, and maintain their genetic diversity. This, of course, requires government policies and strategies. The first matter to be addressed is to incorporate it into the network of the specially protected areas of the state. There are 3 sites where the Przewalski's horse is being reintroduced. The Khomyn Tal are already entered into the network of the specially protected areas of the state. However, Khomyn Tal is only under local protection. Raising the protection level would change how a number of matters are approached, including government policies and legal regulations, public perception, funding, and human resources. The decades-long history of the conservation of the Przewalski's horse, including the 15 years of reintroduction efforts in the remote land of Khomyn Tal, is behind us. Then, what would be the goals and objectives for the next decade?
За ирээдүйд 40-50 жилийн дараа
We are looking about 40 to 50 years in the future. We work towards achieving that Takhi will have a viable population sufficient for surviving in the wild on their own. The locals will be earning certain incomes through Takhi and tourism development. The pastures protected and the livestock reach the sustainable numbers so that the competition for pasture land will be decreased. And finally, the livelihoods of the local communities will have stabilized in this time period. We are certain that our strategy and our activities will bear fruit. In the long run, we wish to become an international model. In conservation management, are committed to working with the partners, policy makers, and local communities in order to make this happen.
Yes, all those who love nature, their homeland, and Mother Earth wish for the future of the Przewalski's horses of Khomyn Tal to be bright and prosperous. Though distant, Khomyn Tal is a special and breathtaking land, a land where the Przewalski's horse that went extinct in the 20th century returned to in the 21st century, a land where they roam free and wild. Takhi. horse is the last remaining species of wild horses. It is a rare species, registered not only in the Mongolian Red List, but also in the World Red List. The Przewalski's horse is of particular significance to Mongolians, who have exalted the horse to their national emblem. The Przewalski's horse of Khomyn Tal is a thundering upon its powerful hooves on the soil of their homeland.
Khomyn Талын Takhi.